Welcome to Moonlit Romance Library. Please follow for more stories. Seraphine Bramblevine had spent 17 years protecting Prince Lucivar Nightcrown's beautiful face, and it took him less than 17 seconds to pretend none of it had mattered. The Hall of 12 Moons was full when he rejected her. Every alpha family in the kingdom stood beneath the silver arches. Noble women wore heavy velvet gowns embroidered with pack crests. Warriors in formal armor lined the walls. At the far end of the hall, the empty black throne of the Alpha King waited beneath a crown carved from moonstone. His younger brother stood on the lower dais in white and gold, handsome enough to make half the court forgive him before he had even committed the offense. Seraphine had always loved that face. When they were children, Lucivar's fine bones and long gold-brown hair had made him look too delicate for the wrestling yard. Other boys had noticed. They had pushed him into mud, taken his boots, and called him a lamb born in a wolf's den. Seraphine, already stronger than boys twice her age, had put all three tormentors into a horse trough and asked Lucivar whether his nose had been damaged. He had stared at her with wet gray eyes and said no. "Good," she had told him. "I like your nose." For years after that, she had stood between him and every fist, insult, and cruel joke. When he grew taller and learned to fight, she trained with him. When his first shift left him feverish, she carried him 3 miles through snow to the healers. When he was afraid to speak before the Southern Pack Council, she sat in the first row and smiled until he remembered every word. She had pursued him openly. She had given him crooked protective charms and praised his hair with an honesty that made him blush. He had accepted her attention, held her hand in private, and once promised that no one would ever make her stand alone in a crowded hall. Now he stood in that very hall and looked through her as if she were an inconvenient pillar. "Lady Seraphine," Lucivar said, loud enough for every noble to hear, "there has been an unfortunate misunderstanding. I have never made a formal mating vow to you." A ripple of whispers crossed the chamber. Seraphine's right hand tightened around the small velvet box she had brought as a gift. Inside it rested the first magic sphere she had ever kept stable for more than a minute. It was no larger than a plum, silver blue and dense enough to crack a stone floor if she lost control. She had practiced for 6 months because she wanted to show Lucivar that her mother's explanation had been true. Her magic was not absent, it was compressed. Lucivar knew that. He had heard her mother explain it when they were children. He had watched Seraphine rise before dawn to train, watched wands split in her grip, watched spells collapse into heavy little balls that rolled through classrooms and shattered furniture. He had told her he believed her. Today, beside him stood Caldrissa Valahart, a highborn witch whose flame magic could fill a ballroom ceiling with golden birds. Caldrissa was lovely in a dark red gown, but her mouth was tense. She did not look at Seraphine. Lucivar continued. "The Southern Territories require a Luna whose magic is already proven. Lady Caldrissa has agreed to stand beside me." Someone near the musicians laughed. "Proven," an older noblewoman repeated. "A practical requirement. One cannot lift a curse by lifting the table." More laughter followed. Seraphine heard the words clearly. She also heard the faint crack inside the velvet box as her magic sphere grew heavier. She had explained herself for years. She had explained that her mother, Mevrian Bramblevane, had never lied about her potential. She had explained that dense magic matured differently. She had explained that strength was not a shameful substitute for witchcraft, but another gift entirely. No one who mocked her had ever wanted an explanation, so she did not give one. "Return the pearl clasp," Lucivar said. His voice lowered, as if gentleness could make the demand less public. "It belonged to my grandmother." Seraphine touched the clasp at her collar. He had fastened it there 2 winters ago after kissing her forehead beneath the old bell tower. He had said it suited the woman who would one day wear his colors. Her chest hurt, not theatrically, not in a way that could be answered with a clever sentence. It hurt with the quiet weight of every morning she had believed they were walking toward the same future. She removed the clasp and crossed the polished floor. Lucivar held out his palm. She set the pearl into it. "You are correct," she said. "You never made a formal mating vow." Relief touched his handsome face too quickly. Seraphine looked at him and remembered a thin boy hiding behind her shoulder. She remembered his hand in hers. She remembered how many times she had defended his courage before he had found it for himself. "But when Lord Petavar put you in a feed barrel at 13, she added, "you promised never to let anyone humiliate me in public." A few people stopped smiling. Lucivar's face tightened. "This is not the time for childhood stories." "No," Seraphine agreed. "Your memory is not as pretty as your face. I should have noticed sooner." The first genuine laugh came from one of the guards. He turned it into a cough when Lucivar glared at him. Seraphine closed the velvet box, slipped it into her pocket, and stepped toward the ceremonial chair on which Lucivar had been sitting before the announcement. It was an absurd object, built from black oak and plated with silver wolves. Her mother had reinforced its legs after Lucivar cracked it during his first uncontrolled shift. Lucivar frowned. "What are you doing?" "Returning another family possession." She grasped the chair beneath both arms. Lucivar had time to look confused before Seraphine lifted the entire chair with him still in it. The Hall of 12 Moons fell silent. She raised him high enough that his boots swung above the floor, turned carefully, and carried him down the center aisle. Lucivar grabbed the carved arms. "Seraphine, put me down." "I intend to." Inside the hall. That detail was not specified. The nearest courtiers scattered. One elderly matron clutched her jeweled cane and laughed so hard she had to lean on a column. Caldrissa covered her mouth. Seraphine could not tell whether she was shocked or trying not to smile. At the open bronze doors, Seraphine set the chair on the outer landing with perfect care. Lucivar remained seated, red-faced and speechless. "Since you do not require my future," she said, "you probably do not require my mother's reinforced furniture either." A low voice behind her said, "Leave the chair, bring the woman back." The command did not need to be loud. Every wolf in the hall felt it. Seraphine turned. The Alpha King had entered through the northern doors without fanfare. Valar Nightcrown wore black silver armor beneath a heavy winter cloak. No skin showed below his throat. His dark hair brushed the collar of his armor, and a thin scar crossed one eyebrow without diminishing the severe balance of his face. He was broader than Lucivar, taller than any man near him, and carried the contained stillness of someone who had never needed to perform strength for a room. Seraphine's grief did something deeply disrespectful. It paused. Her gaze moved from his face to the armored line of his shoulders, then returned to his face because she had standards and intended to examine the better feature twice. Valar stopped 3 paces away. His eyes were a cold, unusual blue. They met hers directly. "Have you finished looking?" he asked. Seraphine considered lying. Her mother had raised her better. "No, Your Majesty, but this appears to be a formal moment, so I can continue later." A shocked sound moved through the court. The king's mouth did not smile, exactly. One corner merely reconsidered its position. He looked past her to Lucivar on the landing. "You received her loyalty for 17 years. Lucivar rose from the chair. "Brother, I can explain. That privilege was available before you invited 12 packs to watch you disgrace her. The Southern Council requires a proven Luna." Valar's gaze returned to Seraphine. "Did you ask her to prove herself today?" Lucivar hesitated. Seraphine answered for him. "No, he asked for his grandmother's clasp." "Efficient," Valar said. "Cowardly, but efficient." Lucivar's jaw hardened. "You have been away at war. You do not understand the pressure here." "I understand pressure. It is the thing that reveals structure. You appear decorative." The guard who had coughed before abruptly studied the ceiling. Valar removed his winter cloak. The heavy black fabric was lined in silver, and fastened with the royal wolf crown. He placed it around Seraphine's shoulders. It smelled of cold air, cedar, and the iron halls of the northern fortress. The gesture was protective, but not possessive. He did not touch her throat or pull her against him. He simply made it impossible for anyone in the room to pretend she stood alone. "She has explained her magic for years," Valor said to the court. "You chose not to believe her. That is a failure of your judgment, not of her truth." Seraphine looked up at him. He was even more unfair from this distance. Without turning, he murmured, "Now is still not the time to inspect me." "You are standing very close," she murmured back. "I am being challenged by circumstances." This time she saw the brief movement at the corner of his mouth. Then he faced the hall. "Lucivar has rejected Lady Seraphine Bramblevane. He is free to live with that decision." Caldrissa finally looked at Seraphine. There was relief in her expression, but also shame. Valor's voice deepened. "I claim her under the crown's right of open choice, not as property, not as consolation, as the woman I intend to court before every pack that mocked her." The words struck the hall harder than a roar. Lucivar went pale. Seraphine stared at the king. "You intend to court me?" "Yes." "Because I carried your brother outside?" That improved the morning. It did not create my interest. "How long have you been interested?" "This is still a formal moment." She narrowed her eyes. "Convenient. You may interrogate me later." On the outer landing, Lucivar took one step toward them. "Seraphine, do not turn this into revenge." She looked at the man she had loved. The pain returned. It did not disappear because his brother was more handsome. Her heart was not a plate one could replace with a better plate. She had dreamed of Lucivar's hand in hers at this ceremony. She had believed he would be proud of her even before her magic awakened. But when she looked at him now, she also saw what he had chosen. Applause from people who had never carried him through snow, approval from nobles who had laughed when he was weak, and the comfort of a woman whose talents required no courage to defend. "I am not doing anything for revenge," Seraphine said. "For the first time today, I am considering something for myself." Valor extended his hand. He did not command her to take it. She studied his gauntleted fingers, then his face, then his shoulders again, because emotional injury had not made her blind. "If I accept your courtship," she said, "I am not agreeing to become queen." "Correct. I will continue training. I would be disappointed if you stopped. And if someone insults my mother, I may fight them. Warn the floor stewards first. They have requested fewer broken tables." Mevrienne Bramblevane's voice came from the rear of the hall. "She only broke 3 last year." Seraphine's mother walked between the nobles in a dark blue high-collared gown, her silver-streaked hair braided down her back. She was not tall, but the court made space for her as if she carried a storm beneath her skin. Mevrienne stopped beside her daughter and examined Lucivar outside with his displaced chair. "You did not strike his face?" she asked. "It was a formal occasion." "Excellent restraint." Then Mevrienne looked at Valor. "My daughter is not a prize you won by arriving at the correct dramatic moment." "I know. She has loved your brother." Valor's expression did not change, but a colder light entered his eyes. "I know that too. She may continue to grieve him even while she finds you attractive." Seraphine closed her eyes. "Mother." "You were staring." "I was wounded." "Not in the eyes." A laugh escaped Caldrissa before she could stop it. Mevrienne turned toward the sound. Caldrissa straightened, expecting rebuke. Instead, the older witch said, "At least one person beside my daughter is honest today." Valor kept his hand extended. Seraphine placed hers in it. His gauntlet was cool. His grip was careful, far gentler than a man of his size needed to be. For one heartbeat, his thumb moved over her knuckles, a quiet touch hidden by the folds of his cloak. The court saw a king claim a rejected witch. Seraphine felt something more dangerous. He was not rescuing her from humiliation. She had already carried the humiliation outside on its own chair. He was choosing to stand beside her after seeing exactly what she was capable of. "Very well," she said. "You may court me." Valor inclined his head. "Generous. Do not become smug. I have been king for 11 years. Smugness is included in the crown." She looked at his face again. "That explains why it suits you." Behind them, Lucivar said her name. Seraphine did not turn. Her heart hurt, her eyes burned. She would probably cry later in a private room, then find something heavy to lift until breathing became easy again. But she walked back into the hall with the Alpha King at her side, her mother's hand warm against her back, and every person who had mocked her forced to move out of her path. The king's cloak trailed behind her like a piece of night that had decided to become a banner. The first object Seraphine broke after her rejection was not a chair, a door, or Lucivar's perfect nose. It was the court's certainty that she would leave quietly. The second object was a banquet table. That happened 3 hours later. Valor ordered the court luncheon to proceed, partly because 12 Alpha families had traveled for the ceremony, and partly because, as he informed Seraphine, "If I cancel the meal, they will think your temper frightened me." Did it? No, it interested me. That is not necessarily healthier. Kings are rarely selected for health. Seraphine sat at his right beneath the black throne. Her mother sat on her other side, calmly eating roast roots while every noble in the room pretended not to stare. Lucivar occupied a place 3 tables away. Caldrissa sat beside him but kept a careful distance. Neither spoke much. The small velvet box remained in Seraphine's pocket. Its weight increased with every glance she felt from the room. Mevrian noticed the pull of the fabric. "Your sphere is responding to distress." "I am not distressed." "The bench is bending beneath your pocket." Seraphine looked down. The carved wood had begun to bow. Valor leaned closer. "Is that the gift you brought for my brother?" It was. "May I see it?" She hesitated. "It is not impressive. Neither is half this court, yet they presented themselves freely." Seraphine drew out the box and placed it on the table. The wood gave a low creak. She opened the lid. The sphere glowed with pale moonlight. It was smooth, almost translucent, with threads of darker silver turning slowly inside. Beautiful, Seraphine thought, if one ignored that it weighed more than a suit of armor and had cracked the base of the box. Valor did not laugh. He removed one gauntlet and held his hand near it without touching. "It is pulling ambient magic toward itself." Mevrian nodded. "That is what I have tried to explain to the Coven Council. Seraphine does not fail to release magic. She condenses too much of it before release." At the neighboring table, a council witch whispered, "A convenient theory." Seraphine heard. She always heard. She reached for the sphere, intending to return it to the box. It jumped. Valor moved at the same instant. The sphere rolled across the table. Plates, goblets, and a silver gravy vessel slid after it as though the sphere had become a tiny moon with its own gravity. Seraphine lunged. Valor caught her around the waist before she pitched over the table, while his bare hand closed around the sphere. The table split down the middle. Everything on it slid into the laps of 6 dignitaries. For one suspended moment, no one spoke. The Alpha of the Eastern Marshes stared at a roasted onion resting in his ceremonial hood. Mevrian set down her fork. 4 tables this year. Seraphine was still held against Valor's armored chest. His arm was firm around her middle, supporting her without effort. She could feel the rise of his breath through layers of clothing and metal. He looked down at the sphere in his palm. "Heavy," he observed. Seraphine looked up at his face. "You are also heavy. I did not announce it to the room." You have not lifted me yet. Give me time. His eyes sharpened with amusement. Only then did Seraphine realize the hall had gone silent for a second reason. The king's arm remained around her waist. She cleared her throat. You can release me. You are standing on a broken table support. I can balance. I know. He did not release her until a servant moved the splintered wood. The delay was practical. The slight pressure of his hand before he let go was not. Lucivar had risen from his seat. Seraphine, are you hurt? The question came too late and too familiarly. She turned toward him. No. His gaze moved to Valor's bare hand around the sphere. That object could be dangerous. So could the woman who made it, Valor said. You were comfortable with both when they served you. Lucivar flinched. Caldrissa stared at her plate. Valor placed the sphere on the stone floor rather than another table. It settled without damage, humming faintly. The Crown's wardmasters will study this with Lady Seraphine's permission, he said. Not to determine whether her power exists. That has become obvious. We will determine how it works. The council witch who had whispered before lifted her chin. Your Majesty, a heavy light is not necessarily useful magic. Seraphine's mother inhaled. Seraphine touched her sleeve. I can manage this one. She faced the woman. You are correct. Weight alone is not useful. The witch looked pleased. Seraphine continued. That is why I have never thrown you. The Eastern Alpha choked on his drink. The roasted onion fell from his hood. Valor picked up his goblet from the wreckage and raised it toward Seraphine, a model of restraint.